Okay, thank you very much for coming. Could each witness please commence by stating your full name, position, title, and swear either an oath or affirmation. Maybe starting with you, Mr. Alexandre.
Jean-Pierre Alexandre, Co-convenor of Save the Powerhouse campaign. I solemnly, sincerely, and truly declare and affirm that the evidence now about to be given by me shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Thank you. Ms. Johnson.
Patricia Johnson, co-convenor of the Save the Powerhouse campaign.
Excuse me, Ms. Johnson, could you bring that microphone around more towards you? That's it.
That better? Okay, I'll start again.
That's better.
Patricia Johnson, co-convenor of the Save the Powerhouse campaign. I solemnly, sincerely, and truly declare and affirm that the evidence now about to be given by me shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Thank you. Would either of you or both of you like to start with an opening statement, a short opening statement?
Yes, we have one.
Thank you.
Good morning, and thank you for inviting us to come here. We welcome the opportunity to explain to the Select Committee who we are and who we are not, and our current position on the Powerhouse Museum. We are, as well as we've given our names, Ultimo residents and have owned a house 100 metres from the Powerhouse since 1995. In early 2015, following former New South Wales Premier Mike Baird's decision to move the museum to Parramatta, we organised a well-attended public meeting at which we proposed to spearhead a campaign to keep the Powerhouse in Ultimo, its home since 1893. The campaign now has 160 listed members and runs an interactive Facebook page with 5,200 followers, mainly to stay in touch with Powerhouse sympathisers, gather their opinions and keep them updated with news, government and media reports. The campaign has grown rapidly over the past 5 years. To give you an idea, in June this year, our post reached well over 110,000 people. We know from messages, comments, and addresses that the Powerhouse has supporters in Australian states, in the UK, New Zealand, the USA, and Asia, as well as across New South Wales. This includes Parramatta, which according to government was intended as the direct beneficiary of the Powerhouse relocation, although we know that Parramattans have rejected it. The member for Parramatta recently said that his constituents alone are qualified to object to this project. But we believe that if it has ambitions to build a world-class institution, the New South Wales government must expect world, not just local, scrutiny. So much for who we are. We are representatives and spokespeople for the ordinary people who love and respect the Powerhouse, from locals to hundreds of thousands of the pre-pandemic international visitors to Sydney. There were 750,000 of them in 2018. However, we are obviously not museum specialists, unlike the majority of your guests here today. And for 5 years, we have associated cordially with the Powerhouse Museum Alliance, relying on their expert insights and guidance, and the North Parramatta Residents Action Group, who are successfully opposing this ludicrous project. On the 4th of July, we felt cautious optimism that the Powerhouse would remain in Ultimo, but this was short-lived, as we rapidly realised that nothing has changed at all. Workers are still packing up the collections every day in the Harwood building, and large parts of the museum are still leased out to UTS. Further, the government-controlled Heritage New South Wales has just recommended approval of heritage listing of the so-called Ultimo Powerhouse, which is unknown at 500 Harris Street, the address of the Powerhouse Museum, and this would actually represent a delisting of much of the museum. After a decade of neglect, we believe that urgently needed maintenance work should be in preparation, yet the government is instead spending $5 million on yet another business plan for later this year. This will admittedly include a do-nothing option for the entire Powerhouse Museum, but in reality we fear it is more likely to recommend dismantling the Powerhouse as we know it, destroying the Harwood building collection facilities, and transforming the museum into a fashion hub or a lyric theatre, with only a very few large objects left in place. Concomitantly, a Secretary's Environment Assessment requirement, that's a SEARS request, is currently in progress for the construction of new storage facilities in Castle Hill, while in Parramatta, the pre-4th of July environmental impact statement in place is still progressing, despite more than 1,200 objections received, and the fact that it applies to the relocation of the Powerhouse Museum, a project which was cancelled nearly 2 months ago. We will continue the battle to keep the Powerhouse in Ultimo intact and refinanced, while supporting Parramattans' desire for the new institution they want on their preferred site, and to prevent destruction of their heritage. Since 2015, Save the Powerhouse has seen a suite of successive premiers, mass directors and CEOs and arts ministers come and go. Together, they have wasted almost $50 million of taxpayers' money in consultancy fees to attempt to justify this unjustifiable project. In contrast, Save the Powerhouse is still alive and well and determined to fight on. Although, as Premier Gladys Berejiklian said yesterday, absolutely no one can predict what will happen in New South Wales as a result of the current pandemic. Thank you.
Ms. Johnson?
Yes.
Now, there's been time for reflection. Since the July 4th announcement, has the Powerhouse Museum at Ultimo been saved?
Do you...
No, we don't believe so.
Can you elaborate?
Sorry.
Can you elaborate? Can you explain?
Well,
Can you explain why you...
As Patricia said in her statement, things are going exactly the same way they were going before the 4th of July. The collections are still packed. The site, a large percentage of the exhibition space is rented out. There is a new business case which we understand would transform the Harwood building, or would allow to demolish the Harwood building for a lyric theatre or something else. There is plans also, we believe in that business case, to move most of the collections in the exhibition, keeping just a few big objects, not that probably because they are too expensive or too difficult to move. The rest becoming a fashion center or something. So that was the plan before, and it's still going on. And Parramatta is still going on the same way. There is Castle Hill. They are planning for new storage facilities, so nothing has changed.
Ms. Johnson, would you like to add? I've spoken to residents, and they feel that the government has actually perpetuated a cruel hoax on the community, claiming that they've saved the Powerhouse Museum, and the government is still going ahead.
Well, this is reflects exactly the way we feel, and we know we really do have a great many people who support the campaign across the country, and we have had so many messages and comments saying exactly the same thing: a sick joke, a hoax. They don't intend to do anything. There is deepest cynicism now about anything that the government says or does, and frankly, they're just not being believed.
Now, you made a statement, you made a comment in your opening statement where you said, and I wrote it down, workers are still packing up the collection.
That is true.
What are you referring to? If the museum's been saved, why are they packing up the collection?
We don't know, but we do know it's happening because we live so close to the Powerhouse that we pass it daily, and we can see them.
What we believe is that they are removing all the collection from the basement of the Harwood building, slowly. They digitalize them in the old Powerhouse. Apparently there is a half a hall dedicated just for that, where there were exhibitions before. And when they are digitalized, they put it in boxes.
Mr. Alexandre or Ms. Johnson, have they reopened the STEAM exhibition rooms, those big floors in the...
Partially, yes.
What does partially mean? What do you mean by partially?
They have reopened the how do you name that? The steam and
Turbine hall.
Yeah, the steam and turbine hall, the one
yeah,
that's
turbine
on the
hall.
level.
Yes, but there is a half a hall which is not open, which is closed, and where we believe, or we were told, the collection are being packed, and they haven't opened the other side in the round building.
Which is, it contains some of the very large objects.
Yes.
Yes.
That's still not open.
It's partially where the large object, where the locomotive number 1 is, that's open, but further to Harry Street is closed.
In the last hearing, I asked the minister, I referenced one of his earlier statements, and I said, does that mean you will guarantee that the Bolton and Watt will stay, the Catalina will stay, and locomotive number 1 will stay? Will you give that guarantee? He said, that's the intention. I pressed him, will you give that guarantee? And he said, yes. Do you think that guarantee is being lived up to?
Sorry, I was just going to add that we are aware from our expert friends of the huge difficulty that would be involved in moving such large, fragile objects. They would probably be irreparably damaged. So it is logical that the government might seek a way to legitimately leave them in Ultimo, simply as Jean-Pierre said, they can't move them.
But the concern is you'll just get a very small remnant,
Yes.
which will be, orphaned from the rest of the collection. Is that your concern?
There will be a handful of objects, yes, Catalina, Bolton and Watt, engine, locomotive number 1, and a few others, but just because they can't move them. They realize that it was too costly or not even possible. And the rest will go. We understand they are still negotiating with museums around New South Wales to give stuff away.
I wanted to ask Ms. Johnson or Mr. Alexandre, in your submission you talked about how for an organisation such as yours, a community-based organisation, grassroots, residents largely, but not just residents of Ultimo, other museum supporters, how the current COVID crisis has made it difficult for you to do your work, consultation, community organising, public meetings, and I wanted to you to draw out a little bit more on that and reflect on that, because we've had the July 4th announcement. There's been, as you say, sort of some disappointment when the reality of that's come forward. How has the coronavirus situation made it difficult for you to do some of the work that you've done? And in your submission, you propose sort of pausing any further decisions until you're able to actually properly engage with the community.
It hasn't completely, I would say it hasn't spoiled everything. We have been able to continue because we are so largely Facebook-based. We communicate through messages, posts, and people, of course, call us and we talk to them. But so much can be done electronically that although we obviously have not been able to hold the physical meetings we would like to have held, it hasn't affected our ability to communicate, if you like, with our public. We've still been able to communicate with them and keep their confidence, I think.
Well, they're digitising the collection, you're digitising your campaign, Ms. Johnson, is that right?
Sorry.
Sorry.
You've got a digital, it's an online campaign, that's how you keep your connections.
Well, we're principally a Facebook campaign, so we communicate with, as I said, in June it was 110,000 people, so we've got a lot of people we reach, and we have not noticed any appreciable decline in contact. There's still they're still expressing their opinions. And so I feel that we have been able to continue. I think that our concern may be to pick up on what Premier Berejiklian said, and I felt that was honest. She said, we simply do not know in New South Wales in the future what is going to happen. And we don't. Nobody does.
Well, what we have lost and what was important before was public meetings and gathering. For example, we wanted to plan a party after the 4th of July. We haven't. We couldn't. But definitely gathering people and letting them talk, etc., exchanging views is very important, and we haven't done that since for the last 6 months.
And as people who are users of the museum and visitors to its space, what's your reflection on the sort of recent history of the exhibitions at the museum, the curatorial standards? You know, since this, really since 2015 in a way, but since this situation has been ongoing, it's been unresolved, there's been so much uncertainty, what's actually happened to the Powerhouse and what is on display there in that time?
During the past year or so, undeniably, the place has been, they've let it run down. We all assume that this is deliberate. This is so that they can say, well, the place isn't drawing people anymore, visitors aren't coming, there aren't any good exhibitions, so let's shut it all down. This was a fairly transparent strategy, but it is in fact, very recently, and since the 4th of July, there has been a marked improvement, and something which to us as ordinary representatives was so encouraging that when we went past the Powerhouse from the 4th of July, there were kids running all around. It was very, very heartening to see the normal young parents with their children, grandparents with their grandchildren, come flooding back. They were in the cafe, they were in the museum. And so this was very, very encouraging.
Well, when they went to online bookings, they literally sold out
Yes,
within,
they did.
Know, within the blink of an eye, didn't they?
Didn't put them off
so
at
much
all.
popularity. Yeah.
Now, in your Ms. Johnson, in your submission, Save the Powerhouse campaign, you talk about your concerns about the heritage listing process. What were those concerns?
The heritage.
Yeah.
There was extraordinary confusion among our followers about the whole heritage question.
Yep.
I mentioned that the New South Wales Heritage had applied for a listing for an institution which, by the name they gave it, does not exist.
Yep.
That's not the first time. This is the second time they've done it. And they applied the first time for the Powerhouse tramways.
Yeah,
now, everybody who knows the museum knows that the Powerhouse tramways does not exist. So it was hard to speculate about what they were up to.
Well, no, speculate what they were up to, because I think you do have an idea of why they gave a name for something that didn't exist.
Well, our theory, not proven, is that by not mentioning the word museum, if they had mentioned the word museum, the Powerhouse something museum, they were committed to considering the whole site as a respected and functioning museum. And they would be more or less compelled to list the whole site. They had to recommend the whole site for priority, as long as they didn't mention the word museum, and that happened twice. They could do almost anything they wanted.
But do you think that there's a bit of a theme developing here? So they claimed that they've saved the Powerhouse Museum on July the 4th.
Oh, yeah, of course they
claimed.
claimed.
And then they claimed that they provided heritage protection.
Yeah, well, we're aware that they've claimed it, and we and others don't believe it.
The fact is that at the moment, the old Powerhouse, the whole building, is locally heritage listed on the City of Sydney heritage list, and that's a whole building, including the inside. And what they are trying to do is to list only the shell, the external wall, so that would permit them to get it out. And so it's a delisting.
Now, I want to take you to the minister's plan to do a lyric theatre there. Does your organization believe that it's compatible to build a lyric theatre on the site and still maintain and fall in line with the Premier's claim that the Powerhouse Museum has been saved?
Yeah.
Mr. Alexandre?
Yeah, so probably two points there is that the Harwood building is something like 30, 40 meter wide. I haven't got the figure. It's definitely not wide enough for a theater, or you would sit people on a long row.
I've been to a lyric theatre.
Yeah. But the other point is that if you remove the collections from the Harwood, which are in the Harwood building, a museum, the definition of a museum is a place which collects objects and then showcase them and study them and analyze them, etc. So if you remove the Harwood building or the collections to somewhere else, it's no longer a museum. The same way Parramatta will not be a museum because they have no room for collection, storage, or curation.
Okay, sorry, David, go ahead.
What's been interesting is the way the government has now been returning to the 2014 business case.
Yes.
That only came to light as a result of, I think, calls for papers in the upper house. Are you familiar with the 2014 business case?
Not completely.
Not enough to comment competently on it, no.
Well, it called for the demolition of the Harwood building
Yes.
and the Rand building. You're aware of those features?
Yes, we're aware of that.
Yeah.
What do you have? What do you say to those proposals?
Well, the first thing is that before the 4th of July, and for a long time, there were calls for clearing the maintenance backlog. The building has been completely, and the museum has been completely neglected for the best part of 10 years. And there was a figure for that of 50 million that everybody seemed to agree. And all of a sudden, the 50 million disappeared, and there's 350 million from 2014 reappeared. And what we understand is that at the time, the museum management was pushing for something that was not really had not really been properly analyzed or didn't make and that was rejected at the time.
Rejected then, and you say should be rejected going forward. Is that your position? Ms. Johnson, was there any community consultation with that 2014 business plan? Were you ever?
None whatever.
Not-
No one knew
not-
anything about it until long afterwards.
And sorry, just a quick follow-up question. Has there been so far any communication with you in relation to consultation on the business plan that's currently in development?
No, none.
No.
Do you get meetings, or have you met the minister? The Minister for the Arts.
Minister for the Arts.
Do you have regular dialogue? Do you have
Haven't
meet?
met Don Harwood.
We haven't
No,
never.
Well, you've never met Don Harwood.
We have repeatedly written to him. Very regularly.
In 6 years, you have never met the Minister for the
Oh,
Arts,
we've not
Don
been-
Harwood.
We have never met the minister.
He's a busy man.
We have
He's a busy
never
man.
met any of the museum
Executives.
directors or CEOs.
Wouldn't a fairer description of that be in the 6 years, no New South Wales Minister for the Arts has ever been willing to meet with you?
Yes, that's correct.
That is.
Could I ask a question,
That is
please?
factually correct, that
Thanks.
you've never met
We
a
got that.
Minister for the Arts.
No?
Got that well. Could I ask a question, Mr. Chair?
Please.
Thank you.
One and only.
Thank you both for being here today. So the collection held by MAS, by the Powerhouse, is substantial. And but obviously it can't all be shown. In fact, only a minority of it can be shown. How do you feel about if, well, let me go back a step. The new Parramatta facility and the Ultimo facility together wouldn't be able to show anywhere near the entirety of the collection. Do you have an objection to having a second facility just conceptually to show more of the body of work that they have available?
Of course not. No. That's desirable.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm just trying to...
No, I understand.
Yeah.
No, in answer to your direct question, no. Because the more of the collections that can be shown, the more this, in New South Wales, the more this would be an advantage. But there are so many complications regarding the new institution at Parramatta,
I understand
that the situation is complicated by those factors.
I totally get that, but I'm just, I guess, looking at it more conceptual based. And so if you look at the Ultimo site, one of your fundamental concerns is that you're worried that basically it's going to be downgraded and that there's going to be less of the collection that will be able to be shown there because of the focus that then will be put on Parramatta. Is that the...
Not entirely, because that is one point. But the other point is that with the changes you suggested, Ultimo, it is no longer the Powerhouse Museum, which has a very old and honourable history, which is revered worldwide we're talking about. We get regular correspondence from the UK and the US about this. People respect it for what it is and has always been.
And you've repeatedly said in your evidence that a museum is more than just the bits you put on display. It's the collection, the curation, the knowledge and all of that, which is at risk.
Yeah. What we understand they are planning is to put all the collections in Castle Hill and then run two show places, show halls in Ultimo and in Parramatta, and that according to all experts, that doesn't work. So each time you want to change the collection, an exhibition, you would have to cart objects, precious and fragile, up and down Castle Hill, Parramatta, Ultimo, but there are other things in a museum. Is that when you prepare an exhibition, you do things to put the objects on. And that's what happens on the first on the ground floor of the Harwood building. If all that disappear, there is no way you can make new exhibitions.
Just quickly, the Minister talks about a cultural industries precinct. Do you understand what he's talking about in relation to that?
No, I can't comment on that. I don't understand enough by what he means. Do you?
Well, no, we are ordinary people. We don't understand the jargon.
You're not on an island.
Can I go back? Can I go back to an earlier? Can I go back to an earlier question? I just want to get clarification. So, you have sought meetings with the government about the Powerhouse Museum project. Over the last 6 years, you have sought meetings with the government with the Powerhouse project.
No.
Have you requested
No,
to
have
meet?
you-
Sorry.
No.
We have regularly requested meetings with Premier Gladys Berejiklian, with Arts Minister and Born-Again Arts Minister Don Harwood, with officials from the department, and we have not ever been given any kind of interview or meeting.
Do I take it again? You can, through us, would you like at this moment to request request your first meeting with Don Harwood? Would you still?
We haven't requested a meeting since the 4th of July.
But I'm asking you if you would like to request one now.
We'd be very willing to request a meeting with it.
Can I just do a follow-up as well? And I think you said in your answers earlier, also the leadership of the Powerhouse Museum itself. So there's obviously the political representatives who you've requested to meet with and have not been able to secure that meeting. But the leadership of the museum itself, you've requested meetings with them and have not been able to meet with them either?
Well, we actually had one meeting in 2015 with the she was the communication person, the PR person, and that was 2015.
5 years ago.
Yeah.
And since then, I mean, as I said, we've established no political representatives have met with you, and no one from the museum has engaged with you. Wow.
No consultation process whatsoever. That's really what you're saying with your group, anyhow.
Yeah.
None.
Yeah. How deeply have you been involved in this campaign?
In what sense?
Or how long have you been involved with it? How deeply
We've been fully involved
has it
with
absorbed?
it 5 years. We research almost every day. We write posts almost every day. We communicate with followers almost every day. So it's pretty well full-time.
We had our first public meeting probably a couple of weeks after the Beard announcement in
2015.
February or March 2015.
2015, yeah. And so you're not going to go away, I suppose we could characterise it that way.
Yes.
Well, certainly not going away.
Not going away.
Yeah. No. And definitely what we get from our followers on Facebook and or on our email is that there is more and more people, and the fact that the 4th of July was a false announcement made a lot of people very angry.
Mr. Alexandre and Ms.
Yeah.
Johnson, I think on behalf of the community, of the committee, I would like to thank you for your passion and your care and your campaigning on behalf of this cultural institution. I really do. I think all of us, even putting to one side our political stripes, all of us could not but recognise your passion and your care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Almost equalled by many on this committee.
Almost.
Almost. Any other questions?
Thank you.
No.
Thank you.
Thank you
for
very
your
much for
time.
coming. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for
And,
inviting us.
Your hard work and devotion is, I'm sure,
Well, we're not
appreciated.
going away.
And